to see everyone this morning. And let me just begin with the sponsor of the Shir. The Shir this morning sponsored for the 2025 academic year, Le'iloi Nishmas Miriam Bas Avram, Alav Hashalom V'Shem Tov Ben Shlomo Zichrono Livracha. All right, so today is a special day to learn. It's always a special day to learn. It's Erev Rosh Chodesh Shvat. Tonight we bring in, amazing. We're going to be bringing in the month of Shvat Wednesday evening. Thursday tomorrow is Rosh Chodesh, and Shvat has the special merit and bracha of Tu B'Shvat that we'll be celebrating in 2 weeks from tomorrow. And I think today's shir is very much in line with that. So I think in the sense of in Yana Diyoma, as we're moving into Shvat to talk about this topic, it's a topic that I would say is definitional, that it very much defines the heart and soul of Rav Kook. You know, so much that we've studied over this year and over the last number of years, you see the special qualities and the novel ideas of Rav Kook, but this is something that really is, I would say, very much a definition of his personality. And I'll give it the title Chibat Haaretz. Chibat Haaretz, which means loving the land of Israel. The Chiba, the love that we have for the land of Israel. One of the most beautiful sources for this is found at the end of Maseches Ketubot, Ksubos. It's at the very end, the last daf. And interesting, the student of, and it speaks about, we'll see it in a moment, you probably are familiar with some of these teachings or episodes, incidents. They're all about loving the land of Israel. The student of Rav Kook, the Nazir, Rav David Cohen, he says it's not accidental that it's found at the end of Ketubot in this Masechta. Why here, of all the different Masechtos of Shas? Well, what is Ksubos about? It's about a marriage. It's about the love of a husband and wife. And OUisrael and Eretz Yisrael is a marriage. There's a bond between the Jewish person, the Jewish people, and the land of Israel. And he says that's why it's here in Ketubot, and it ends. It's kind of like the ultimate at the very end, the very last teaching of the Masechta. That's all about love and all about relationships and husband and wife and marriage. So this is the marriage of OUisrael to her land. The Gemara has the following incidents, and again, I think you're probably familiar with some of them. Rabbi Abba, I'll read it. It's the very first source. You have it in the Hebrew translation. Rabbi Abba Menashe Kipe de Akko. He would kiss the stones of Akko when he would enter Akko, coming from his ship, coming from the sea. As he would come to dry land, he would pick up a stone and he would kiss it. We're familiar with that as people coming off of an El Al flight. At least in the old days, many people would fall to the ground in the tarmac. Today they bring you right in. So I don't know if anybody wants to really kiss the carpet in the airport. Rabbi Chanina mitakein mitakle. He would pick up obstacles, the unevenness of the roads in Eretz Yisrael. He didn't want anyone to complain or maybe anyone to trip in Eretz Yisrael. So as he would walk down the street, if you see some garbage, if you see a can sitting there, you pick it up. It's Eretz Yisrael. You love Eretz Yisrael. You don't want anyone to complain about Eretz Yisrael, anyone to get injured in Eretz Yisrael. Rabbi Ami and Rabbi Asi, they did something very interesting. Kaime mishamsha letula mitula l'shamsha. As they were learning Torah together, if they were in a cold place, they would get up and they would move to a warm place. And if they were in a place that was too warm, they would find a place that was shady. And why did they do that? This is based on Rashi. It says here, they did this in order to eliminate any cause for complaint they might have about living in Eretz Yisrael. They didn't want to complain about anything. And if they sit there, they're going to say, oh, it's too cold. They didn't want to say that about Eretz Yisrael, so they found a place. And the Mefarshim say, even the hefsek in learning, which is a very serious issue, you're in the middle of Talmud Torah, to take 10 minutes to find where the sun is down the street, that little spot where the sun is, so you're breaking from your learning. That's a serious issue. But they took this idea so seriously that they moved in the middle of their learning to a place where they would not say a negative word about Eretz Yisrael. And then you have Rabbi Chia bar Gamda, Megander ba'afra. Rabbi Chia bar Gamda, he would roll in the dust of Eretz Yisrael. Shenemar, in a beautiful pasuk from Tehillim, Ki ratzu avadecha savana, for your servants have cherished her stones, ve'et afara yechonenu, and they favor her dust. So this is a well-known section that really it closes out the Gemara Ksubos. And I just want to share with you the following. I'm not going to read inside. It's the next source. It's the Maharal of Prague. The Maharal of Prague says he has Chidushe Agados. He has his commentary on the Agadata and Shas, and he says the following. He says that these really all represent different halachot that we have about the land of Israel. Fascinating. He says, well, first it's the rocks of Eretz Yisrael, right? The kissing of the rocks. So he says that's based on halacha that anyone who walks on the rocks, on the stones, on the streets of Eretz Yisrael, that Dalit Amos, if you walk 4 steps, that's considered to be a mitzvah. Right? It's not true in Muncie or in Baltimore or in Lakewood, but here, 4 steps, every time Dalit Amos, that's considered a mitzvah. He says that's what the Gemara is hinting at. He says that they moved from the sun to the shade. That's referring to the Avira Da'ara. We say Avira Da'ara Makim. He says that really refers to a halacha, that in Eretz Yisrael, just the air itself, just the Avir of Eretz Yisrael, that it brings us greater perception and insight, greater intelligence in the land of Israel. You cannot have the same perception outside of the land of Israel as you have in Israel. And then the last, speaking about rolling in the dust of Eretz Yisrael, so the Maharal says that that's referring to the special quality of being buried in the land of Israel. And the Gemara says that one is forgiven for all their sins if you're buried in the soil of Eretz Yisrael, in the earth of Eretz Yisrael. And the Gemara says that one will be the first for Tchias HaMesim, those that are buried in Eretz Yisrael, they are first brought back to life before those outside of the land of Israel. So that is what, yes, Roseanne. Right. No, so there is a beautiful minhag as well of people, even if they lived a lifetime outside of Eretz Yisrael, that they're buried in Eretz Yisrael to have that zchus. There are those sources that say that, by the way. I believe that the Zohar says that just to come a whole lifetime and say, well, I'll just come to be buried here, that's not the way that Eretz Yisrael wants to receive you. We want to receive you in a joyous manner, not just to bury a person in Eretz Yisrael. What? That's right. Bekomi, very nice. Bekomi, that's right. Very good. I think Rav Kook and his students said that. Rav Kook has really a well-known teaching on this as well. So that's the Maharal's teaching. Interesting, the Maharal, when we think about the teachings of Rav Kook, a lot of his philosophy and his insights seem to be based on teachings of the Maharal. Here Rav Kook says the following. He says, why do we need both the example of the dust or the dirt of Eretz Yisrael and the rocks of Eretz Yisrael? It seems kind of like redundant to some degree. So he says, no, there is a difference between the two. Rav Kook says, when you speak about the soil or the dust of Eretz Yisrael, you might say Eretz Yisrael is holy because there are mitzvot tatluyot ba'aretz, because you can plant things, talking about Tu B'Shvat and Shvat. So all the halachos of planting things, so there are mitzvos that you can only do here. But he said, were the Gemara only to speak about the dust or the soil of Eretz Yisrael, you would think that that's why it's holy, because there are more mitzvot here. But it's true also of kissing the stones. What mitzvot are there in the stones of Eretz Yisrael? Rav Kook says there are no mitzvot. It's just intrinsically what it's teaching us is that Eretz Yisrael, that the soil, that the land of Eretz Yisrael has embedded in it holiness. There is holiness here in the land of Israel. Even without a mitzvah, again, talking about soil, there are particular mitzvot that are connected to that. So that's how Rav Kook introduces or adds to this teaching. Okay, talking about the love of Eretz Yisrael and the Chiba, I think we need to see a classic piece from Rav Kook, and it's the very first thing that Rav Kook writes in his famous Sefer Orot. This is the bottom of the page, source number 3. This is Orot. He wrote a book all about the Jewish people, about the land of Israel, his philosophy, and he speaks about the very first thing that he speaks about in the book, and again, you can see the love that Rav Kook has, and he's going to use the word chiba to appreciate what is it that's unique about the land of Israel. How do we conceptualize this holiness, the land? How do we define it? What does it mean when we talk about the holiness of the land of Israel? So this is what he writes, and we have the translation below this from Betzalel Naor's translation of Orot, and I'll read the Hebrew on top. Eretz Yisrael einena davar chitzoni. Number one, it's not something that is external to the Jewish people. In other words, we should not think about Eretz Yisrael, there's a particular mitzvah or something outside of the very essence of what it means to be Jewish. It's not a kinyan chitzoni leuma. It's not an acquisition that it is external to the nation. Rak betur emtsa'i, that it's just a means, the matara, with a goal in mind, shel hit agdut, that it's a place that we can bond together, haklalit, vehechsakat, kiyuma hachomri. And it's a place that we can, as a people, physically, that we can exist in that place. O afilo ruchani, and not even a place that we set aside that's here in this world as a place for spirituality. All of that is true, by the way. I know it's a place that we all gather together. There is an aguda that we're all together. We're a nation here. It's a place of spirituality, but that's not the definition of Eretz Yisrael, says Rav Kook. So what is Eretz Yisrael? Says Rav Kook, second line end of the line, Eretz Yisrael, he chativa atzmutit. It's an essential unit, kishura bekesher chayim im ha'umah. It is bound together with the nation itself. We are bound as a nation, and every Jew is bound to Eretz Yisrael. It's not something that is external to us. It's something that's part and parcel of what it means to be Jewish and what it means for the Jewish nation to have the land of Israel. Chabuka beskulot penimiyut im mitziuta. It's bound to the bound of life, to the people, to the very essence of Am Yisrael. Umito kach i'afshar lamod al hatochen shel skulat kedushat Eretz Yisrael. It's impossible really to define this singular quality of Eretz Yisrael, o lehotzi lepoel et omek chibata, and to speak about its true, here's the word chibat Eretz Yisrael, right? Talking about chibat, he uses the word, you cannot speak about this love, bishum haskala ratziolanit. What's ratziolanit? That's right. In any rational terms. We cannot speak about it in logical terms. When we speak about the love and the attachment and the bond, that's not something that we can speak about in a rational way, in a logical way. We are just intrinsically bound. That's how God created the Jewish people in Eretz Yisrael, that we are one and the same. Ki'im beruach Hashem asher ha'umah bichlala. This is the very essence of the Spirit of God that he places on the nation and the attachment that we have to Eretz Yisrael. You know, there's that famous story of Rabbi Levin when his wife was not feeling well, that she had her foot or her leg was hurting, and they walk into the doctor, and Rabbi Levin says, our leg is hurting, right? Our leg is hurting. So our leg is hurting means that I'm one and the same, right? I feel the pain. What the Gemara says, ishto kegufa, right? That when you're married, you become, it's one. Somehow you merge into a oneness. And that's what Rav Kook says about the land of Israel and Am Yisrael. And when you talk about the love of people also, can you really break that down into rational or logic? This is why I love my wife. Let me tell you the 4 reasons or the 150 reasons. At some point, it's not about reason, not about logic. There's a bond. So this is what Rav Kook says. When we think about Chibat Haaretz, we're talking about an intrinsic love, a bond between Eretz Yisrael and Am Yisrael. Turn the page now. This is a very interesting source. And so we have this siddur of Rav Kook. It's called Olat Ra'aya, or Olat Ri'iyah, which on the one hand, that means the sacrifice, the Olat Ri'iyah, but it also is the Olah, the offering of Ri'iyah. What's Ri'iyah in this case? Rav Avram Yitzchak HaKohen Kook. So that's the name of his siddur. One of the sections of the siddur has the text, has the section for Brit Milah, for circumcision, what one says at a bris. And he has a comment, and I would say this is really not typical for Rav Kook, this comment. It was a combination. He wrote some of it, and Rav Tzvi Yehuda Kook, his son, also took certain passages. I believe this would be a passage that his son added. Again, it's from Rav Kook. It's written by Rav Kook, but you'll see it's something a little bit different than the way Rav Kook normally writes. But on this, so we're on the top of page 2. It's on the pasuk that said as part of the bris milah, the text of the bris milah, Vayamal Avram Yitzchak beno ben shmonos yamim kasher tziva oso Elokim. And Rav Kook quotes the following: the Sefer Shar HaChatzer. In the Sefer with the title Shar HaChatzer, which I looked up, it's written in the 1800s. B'Siman Kufnun Beis, Hevi b'Shem Sefer Tuv Haaretz. He brings a quote from another Sefer called Tuv Haaretz. I'm not sure exactly what that Sefer is. I believe it's more of a Kabbalistic Sefer. So he's quoting from the Sefer Shar HaChatzer, and who quotes from Sefer Tuv Haaretz, Shemalat Eretz Yisrael Gedolah, that the greatness of Eretz Yisrael is as great Kema'alat Brit Milah, that it's elevated like a bris milah. Now, that's what it says in the Sefer. And then it says the following: Midalet Shemot Shel Eretz Yisrael. And this is based on the 4 names that we have for Eretz Yisrael. That Eretz Yisrael is called Eretz Chaim, It's called Eretz Tzvi, it's called Eretz Yisrael, and it's called Eretz HaKadoshah. That's what this Sefer says. We have 4 names of Eretz Yisrael, and Sofei Tevot, if you look at the last letter of each of those names, it spells out the word Milah. So again, that's Chaim, you have the Mem at the end, Tzvi, a Yud at the end, Eretz Yisrael, the Lamed at the end, and Eretz HaKadoshah has a Hey at the end. So that's Milah. That Eretz Yisrael and Milah, that there's a unique correlation or connection between the two. And then Rav Kook writes the following, V'hineni mosif la'aniyut dati. And I would like to add the following in la'aniyut dati means in my humble, aniyut dati, in my humble thinking. I'll say the following. Shirashei Tevot, if you look at the Rashei Tevot, the first letters, by the way, you don't usually hear Sofei Tevot. Have you heard that? We're all familiar with Rashei Tevot, but there's something called Sofei Tevot also, which means the last letters, you can look at that, and that also has significance. So that's what this Sefer says. But Rav Kook says, let me give you a Rashei Tevot. So I'd rather go with the more traditional Rashei Tevot. That if you take those 4 words that we talk about Eretz Yisrael being Eretz Yisrael, Eretz Tzvi, Eretz Chaim, Eretz Kadoshah, so the Yud, the Tzadi, the Chet, and the Kuf, what does that spell? Hu Yitzchak. That's Yitzchak. And who is Yitzchak? Rosh L'Nimulim L'Shmona. He was the first person ever to receive a bris milah on the 8th day.
He never left.
Good, excellent. Lehorot shechashivut Eretz Yisrael hi kamo milah b'miluah shechaviva mitzvah b'shaita. So what do we have here? We have milah, we have Eretz Yisrael, we have Yitzchak. So what are all these allusions? Well, first of all, when we talk about milah, what are we talking about? We're talking about a brit. We're talking about a covenant, a bris, brit milah. When we talk about Eretz Yisrael, is that a mitzvah? It is a mitzvah, but it's something else as well. What else is it? It's also a brit. It's also a covenant. That same term is used for Eretz Yisrael in Bereshis, that this will be a covenant. So we're talking what? Exactly, the brit of the land. So here we're talking about something that really goes beyond the idea of a mitzvah. We have something that is covenant. And what does covenant mean? It means that it's something that binds us, and something that binds us forever. Again, this is the idea, and they talk about the difference between a contract. What's the difference between contract and covenant? Contract, I can rip up the contract, right? I can say I'm no longer in, right? Or covenant, there's no way out. That's covenant contract. So covenant means this is forever. This is forever. So Brit Milah is the sign on the body of the Jew of that relationship, that eternal relationship with God of the Jewish people. And then we have another Brit, and that is the land of Israel. And then we have Yitzchak, who is the first to receive Brit Milah, and he also is the first to be born in Eretz Yisrael and never to leave Eretz Yisrael. Right? Avraham comes, Yaakov has to leave. Yitzchak represents, he embodies the idea of Eretz Yisrael. So there you have the covenants all coming together. So I think these are some of the, again, Rav Kook doesn't spell it out, but I'm trying to just, well, what are the allusions here? He's not just a cute thing, well, Yitzchak is Yisrael, putting together these letters, but what does it mean? And it means that this is what Eretz Yisrael is. Eretz Yisrael really goes beyond the mitzvah. To talk about Eretz Yisrael just as another mitzvah, and that's exactly what Rav Kook said earlier, do not think about it that way. Do not think about it as something external, that there's 613 mitzvot, and you take a lulav and esrog, that's one mitzvah, you're connected to it, but it's not something that you do all the time. No, this is covenant. This is the very essence. This is the very heart and soul of a Jew and the Jewish people. Look at the following. This is the bottom of page 2, and this is the tombstone. This is the matzeva of Rav Kook. And talking about a person that loved the land of Israel, so what do you write on a matzeva? So it's interesting, whenever, God forbid, we shouldn't know it, but when we think about what to write on a matzeva, so people do think about that and what's appropriate. So this is what's written on the matzeva of Rav Kook. It talks about, it's the date that he arrives in Israel, it's the date that he arrives in Yerushalayim, and it's the date that he goes to Shamayim. That's what we have. What? Okay, good. So when does he arrive? So if you look, you can read it here. I took it from Google. You can Google this, and I have this picture here. So Rav Avram Yitzchak Cohen Kook, the son of Shlomo Zalman, Allah le'eretz HaKodesh, right in the middle, Chavchet Iyar, in the year Tafrei Samach Daled, 1904. So the first thing that I'll point out to you, when did he arrive? on the 28th of Iyar. What's significant about the 28th of Iyar? That's right. It's going to be the same day, amazingly, that we're going to return to Yerushalayim. That's the day that Rav Kook comes to Israel, Chavchet Iyar. 63 years later, it'll be the day that we will regain the old city. Now the next day is Allah Yerushalayma, that he came to Jerusalem. Now this is where he left Israel for a period of time. He was going to an Aguda convention. He got stuck there for a number of years, and then he made his way back, and he was invited to come to Yerushalayim to become the chief rabbi of Yerushalayim. When did he step foot in Yerushalayim? That time, and at that moment he was then given that title to be the leader of Yerushalayim and becomes the chief rabbi. That was on Gimel Elul, 1919, Tafresh Ayin Tes, 1919. That's the day that he steps foot, Allah Yerushalayma, that he comes to Yerushalayim. And when did he leave this world? On that same date, on Gimel Elul in 1935. So amazing these dates in terms of talking about a person who loves the land of Israel. I don't believe that this is all coincidence. That he comes on the 28th of Iyar, that becomes the day that we regain Yerushalayim. He comes to Yerushalayim on Gimel Elul. That's the day that he ascends to heaven. And you see his special connection in a very spiritual and a very deep way to Eretz Yisrael and to Yerushalayim. Okay, we turn out to the next page, page 3. And here, there are many psukim, and again, this is very appropriate for, as we're about to enter the month of Shvat, many psukim in the Torah that speak about halachos, the laws of Eretz Yisrael, but then we have psukim that just speak about the beauty. What I would say is in this category of chiba, the love that we have for Israel, for the land of Israel. I think this is a good example of such a pasuk. The pasuk says, and this is Sefer Devarim, and it is Devarim Chet Chet, 8:8. I think that's a good number. It's chapter 8, verse 8. It's a good way to remember it. 8's always like, right? The supernatural, like beyond this world. So what does the pasuk say? And it's a pasuk that I think all of us are familiar with. We're probably going to be talking more about in the coming weeks. That it's called an eretz chita. It's a land that grows wheat, useorah, and barley, the geffen, and grapes, uteina, and figs, virimon, and pomegranates. Have you seen pomegranates around? Yeah, they're everywhere. I mean, not right now. They're not in season right now. But you can walk the streets of Yerushalayim. Every few blocks, there are pomegranate trees all over. That's what the pasuk says. Are there grapes all around? My sister lives in Arno. She has grapes just growing right outside her house. She doesn't have a vineyard, but somehow grapes, they're growing there. So this is the description, the beautiful description of the land of Israel. And then it says it's an eretz zeit shemen. It's a place where you have the olive oil and dvash, and it's a place of honey. And we know the Gemara says it's referring to dates, referring to date honey. So one of the interesting things about this pasuk, and Rav Kook picks up on this, is that it says the word, take note of this, it says the word eretz 2 times in the pasuk, which is strange. It should not, you would think that would not be the way we would present, or Hashem would present the pasuk. Right? It's eretz, chita, seorah, geffen, teina, v'rimon, eretz, second time, zeit shemen udvash. Now why do that? Why break the pasuk into 2 parts? So Rav Kook has the following approach, very interesting approach. It's actually based on the following Gemara. The Gemara in Brachos Daf Mem Aleph has a story where you have Rav Chisda and Rav Hamanuna. They were sitting together at a meal, and they brought out some fruits, and they had on the table dates and pomegranates. They had tamarim, and they had they had rimonim. Yes. And what happens? That Rav Hamanuna first makes a bracha on the tamar. He first makes a bracha on the date. Now that seems to be somewhat problematic because we would think that it should be based on the order in the pasuk. In other words, the closer you are to the beginning of the pasuk, that should be what is considered to be more important. So you should make that bracha first. But the Gemara, for some reason, and the Gemara is going to discuss this, why is it that he did the following? And the Gemara says, you know why? Because the date is closer to the word eretz in that second part of the pasuk. But the rimon, the pomegranate, where does it come out in the first part of the pasuk? It comes out what number? Let's count that. It's chita, seorah, geffen, teina, virimon. So it's fifth. It's fifth on the list from the first Eretz, right? But in the second Eretz, you have the Tamar, the Devash, the date, which is number 2. So being that it's closer to the word Eretz in the second part, so he believed, Rav Hamanuna said, I first need to make a bracha on the date first, because that word is closer to the word Eretz in the second part of the pasuk. All this sounds a little bit confusing, and it is a bit confusing. Rav Kook gives the following explanation. He says that the word Eretz, the two words represent two ways in which Jews love the land of Israel. It represents two different relationships to the land of Israel. Let's look at what Rav Kook writes. This is the Einayah. This is number 3, right below. Ubasher chibat haaretz michuleketi. There are really two ways to think about, and here's this word chiba, the love that we have for the land of Israel. Lefi ma'alat hanashim v'akaratam. There are different people, different groups that love the land of Israel in a different way. Ki yesh shemechavev eretz hakodesh. There are those that love the Holy Land. Bishvil seguloteha hayikaro, because it has very unique qualities, spiritual qualities. V'tzama me'od. And these people have a great thirst. Lirtzot avaneha. They want to roll they want to kiss the stones. They want to roll in the dust. Kidei lekayem hamitzvot. They want to fulfill the mitzvah of the land of Israel. Atluya ba'aretz. Ubishvil hatachlit ha'elyona. They want to come to the land of Israel. They love the land of Israel because of the spirituality of the land of Israel. Hanitzeit ba lechlal Yisrael, that's found here for the Jewish people. Ulechlal ha'olam b'malatam haruchanit. However, so that's one way that we love the land of Israel, or Jews love it because of the spiritual qualities, and that's why they come to Israel. However, v'yeshmi, but there are those shemechavev eretz hakodesh v'yishtadel b'yishuva u'b'dirata. There are those that want to live here. Why? V'shvil shemakir b'hatachlit shel haminucha hachomrit. They see that it's a safer place to live. They see on a physical level or materially that it's better to live in the land of Israel. Shehu gamkein davar tov v'nisgav. What is he referring to? He's referring to really the two different communities that were coming to Israel at that time. It's true today as well. There are those that connect to the land of Israel because of the religious, spiritual qualities. I think for many of us here, that's what inspired us to come to the land of Israel, that we feel that this is a mitzvah, the holiness of the land of Israel. But are there not Jews? There are many Jews that come every year. And I think I just heard recently, Nevesh Ben Nevesh, they said there's like 50% of non-religious Jews that are coming to Israel that are making aliyah. I was shocked. I think 40%, 50% they're not coming because, the mitzvot of the land of Israel, right? They're not coming for those reasons. Why are they coming to the land of Israel? Well, they're coming because they believe in nationhood and that one needs to be here and building up the land of Israel. So Rav Kook says there are two types of Jews and two communities that come to the land of Israel. And let's go to the very end here. Al-Kain. If you go 6 lines on the second column. Al-Kain. Mi sheyesh lo korva yitera le'eretz hakodesh afilu b'madrega nemucha. A person who loves the land of Israel, even if they're on a lower level. And again, that's what he's referring to the second part of the pasuk. Right, the first part represents those Jews that love the land of Israel because of the spiritual qualities. But then the second eretz in the pasuk is referring to those Jews that are drawn to the land of Israel, not necessarily because of the spiritual or religious ideals, but they're coming here for other reasons. But if those people have a great love for the land of Israel, yesh lanu lechazko, we have to strengthen that community, le'amtso, la'gdimo libracha, and we should begin with them when we recite a bracha. So he's explaining the Gemara. There's quite a novel interpretation of the Gemara that rabbi, Rav Hamanuna, that he first picked up the date before he made a bracha, and he made a bracha first on the date before he made on the Rimon. Now the Rimon is in the first part of the pasuk, and the date's in the second part of the pasuk. But where is the date in that second part of the pasuk next to Eretz? He's closer to Eretz Yisrael. And Rav Kook says somebody that loves the land of Israel, that has that kind of intense love for the land of Israel, even if they're not doing it for religious reasons, but because they feel that closeness to Eretz Yisrael, that bracha comes first. That's what Rav Kook says. Yesh lanu lechazko lamtso lagdimo libracha mimi shemitacher mitrachek. Somebody who's distant from Israel, af al pi shebetocha levi hamitrachek bal madriga yoter yona. That person has that person believes in the spiritual qualities of the land of Israel. But where is that person in his beliefs about the spiritual qualities of the land of Israel? He's not really that connected to the land. I mean, he believes it, but he's pretty far. He's fifth on the list. He's like the Rimon. He's all the way down there on the list. He knows, he believes in that. That's his perspective at the land of Israel, but it doesn't really animate his life. It doesn't really speak to him. He believes in it, but that's not really how he lives his life based on that love for the land of Israel. But what does the date represent? Yes, it's the lower quality of loving the land of Israel, but it's very close to the land of Israel. And one who has, and this is Rav Kook, one who has that chiba of Eretz Yisrael, and it's a strong chiba, that's something that needs to be celebrated. And he says that bracha comes first. By the way, that's how we paskin. That's the halacha as well. If you have on the table a date or a rimon, the date comes first. Did you want to make a comment, please?
I always wondered about the fact that why is it only considered the distance from Eretz to the fruit
Yes.
on the far side, and not on the. In other words, Rimon is right next to the.
Right. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. It's a bit complicated. You need to kind of work out the.
I think a good explanation.
Yes, please.
Possible explanation, but anyway, is that it only counts when you're Kona Eretz Yisrael. If you're Kona Eretz Yisrael, you have Eretz first, then how close you are to Eretz makes a difference.
Right.
If you're not Kona Eretz Yisrael and you never really immerse yourself in it and it becomes part of you, it doesn't count.
Yeah, very nice. And by the way, the Gemara itself says this. It says, how do we determine the bracha? It's whatever is closest to the word Eretz Yisrael. I mean, just that alone, without going into Rav Kook. That's the Gemara. How do you determine which one you say first? Whatever fruit appears in the pasuk closest to the word Eretz, to Eretz Yisrael. And that now takes precedence. Okay, so that's Rav Kook. I want to share with you two other sources, and then I'll share a couple of stories with you related to the Chibat Haaretz. Go to page 4, and here we come to a close. This is a famous teaching of the Or HaChaim. Or HaChaim HaKadosh lived in the 1700s. He actually comes to Yerushalayim. In the old city, you can see the shul where he davened. Has anybody ever visited that? The Or HaChaim HaKadosh, the synagogue right in the old city. And he has one of the most famous, one of the most important commentaries on the Torah, known as the Or HaChaim. And he writes the following. The pasuk says, we're on top of page 4, Vaya ki tavo el haaretz. When you come to the land of Israel, right? That's the name of the parsha, ki tavo, coming to the land of Israel. So his comment is on the word v'haya. And he says, whenever you see the word v'haya in the Torah, it's always something that's joyous. That's a word that always is a sign for something of joy, of happiness. And he writes the following, Vaya ki tavo el haaretz, amar v'haya. It says, begins with the word Vaya, Lashon Simcha. Vaya is always joy. Laha'ir, that's to teach us, She'en lismoach ela b'yeshiva ta'aretz. That one is to be joyous with sitting, with settling, living in the land of Israel. Aderech amro, like it says in the pasuk, Az yimalei sechok pinu. That when we come to the land of Israel, we'll be filled with joy, that we will be filled with laughter. So the joy, he says, Vaya is always represents joy, and that's why it says Vaya ki tavo. Coming to the land of Israel is joyous. Living in the land of Israel is joyous. Now, what is the joy of being in the land of Israel? I think there are many ways that we can answer that, but I want to answer it in the following way. And this is a sefer called the Sefer HaCharedim, a very important work going back to the 1500s. Rav Azikri, he was born in Sfat. He was one of the rabbis along with Rabbi Yosef Cairo and that very, very special time in Sfat. And you may know him from another prayer that he wrote, Rabbi Zikri, the Yedid Nefesh that we sing on Friday night in Shalosh Shuddis, Yedid Nefesh. He is the author of Yedid Nefesh. He has a sefer called Sefer Charedim, nothing to do with the Charedim of today per se, but that's the name of his sefer. Charedim means, right, those that are chared, those that are in fear of God and closeness to Hashem. And he writes also about this word V'haya and the beginning of this parsha Kitava, V'hitchil b'tevat V'haya. It begins with the word V'haya. Why? Hu echad mishneim asar tseirufin shel Hashem HaKadosh. The word V'haya is one of the names of God. Now, there are different ways of breaking up, but those same letters, V'haya, look at the word V'haya. Do you see those letters? Those are the letters of the holiest name of God. So what is it about the land of Israel when we say V'haya, the joy of being in the land of Israel? It's the joy of being in the presence of Hashem. That's what it means, V'haya. It's an allusion to God's presence that is revealed in the land of Israel like nowhere else in the world. Remez, and that is a hint, Ki adar be'eretz Yisrael davek b'Hashem. that one is closer to Hashem in the land of Israel. Hefech hadar b'chutz la'aretz, which is just the opposite of one who lives outside the land of Israel. And now go to the second paragraph. The Katav Ramban, and the Ramban wrote the Minyan Taryag Mitzvah when he enumerated the 613 commandments. He wrote Yeshivat Eretz Yisrael, the one who lives Mitzvat Yeshivat Eretz Yisrael, the mitzvah of living in the land of Israel. Kol Eit V'Rega She'Adam Be'Eretz Yisrael Hu Mikayem HaMitzvah Zu. So this is also, people may remember this from the comparison of a sukkah in Eretz Yisrael, that when you're living in Israel, you're fulfilling, says Ramban, a mitzvah every moment. You're in Israel. You're in a place where you're fulfilling automatically b'chol eit v'rega she'adam be'eretz Yisrael hu mikayem hamitzvah. You are fulfilling. It's not the day that you got off the flight and said, I'm making aliyah. Right? It's every moment that you're living in Israel, says Ramban, mitzvah, 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 mitzvah. V'yadua. Now, this is what the Sefer Charedim writes. This is very important. V'yadua she'ikar schar mitzvah, but the essence of the mitzvah, the real reward for the mitzvah is what? Al hasimcha hagedola ba, when you feel the joy of living in Israel, based on the pasuk Tachar asher lo avadat ad Hashem lokecha b'simcha. Right? There's a sin of not feeling that joy. Here, this final line, we can underline it, even though I think it's underlined. Put another underline. Im Kain, says Rabbi Zikri in the Sefer Charedim, Sarich hayoshev be'Eretz Yisrael. All those that are living in Eretz Yisrael, sarich liyot sameach tadir. You have to always be happy. The mitzvato, that with this mitzvah hatidira, there's a mitzvah that you're fulfilling every moment, and to have a joy for that mitzvah, the avatoota, that you should love that mitzvah. So I think there's something to think about in our own lives in terms of the joy that we have. You know, we could be riding on a bus and we're surrounded, kind of smushed in with everyone, and you can look around and say, "Wow, what a joy to be, to have body to body with my fellow Jews." You're walking on the street and you hear French and you hear Russian and you hear all different languages, and to say, "Wow, what a simcha, what a joy, right? That I'm here with Jews that are coming from all over the world." And how about all the building that's going on, Yerushalayim? Sometimes it's not always so, getting through the streets, right? To look up, that's right. They say the official bird of Israel, the crane. So and to look up and to say, what a joy to see with our own eyes, to be living at this time, to see the building here in Israel. So Rav Kook is there's no question, as I said earlier, in terms of the very heart and soul of Rav Kook is Chiba. He actually writes in one place that we need to remind the Jewish people of he says, like a mitzvah or something that's been lost a little bit over the generations, and that is the chiba for Eretz Yisrael. Chiba ta'aretz, love. That's true everywhere, by the way. You can be living anywhere in the world and to be walking around with a sense of chiba, of a real love for Eretz Yisrael. I think it's even more true for all of us that are here to be able to experience that. So I think about Rav Kook certainly as an example of that. I just want to share one other example, or another rabbi. He's a rabbi that I heard quoted over the years, and Rav Mordechai Gifter, Zecher Tzadok Livracha. I'm not sure if that's a name that anyone is familiar with. He was the rabbi that tells yeshiva in Cleveland for many, many years, one of the Gedolei Torah. And when I was in YU, there was like a tape that was going around YU of Rav Gifter, and it wasn't really such a great talk. He was kind of lambasting YU for the way that they teach Talmud, and it's just listed as another course. He wasn't really so positive about YU. It was one of those tapes that everybody was, in those years, that was the way to listen to something. Yeah, that's right. It went viral that way. So I don't know. I always thought of Rav Gifter, that tells Rosh Hashiva in Cleveland, and I don't know, not a rabbi that necessarily, thinking about Eretz Yisrael, like his relationship. So he was asked to come to Eretz Yisrael to start a yeshiva, a branch of Telz here, which is called Telz Stone today. Those that are familiar with Telz Stone, that's Telz, and Stone is Irving Stone. That was the man that gave the money for the yeshiva, a well-known philanthropist. The stone chumash, the art scroll, is the stone chumash, and that's why till today it's called Telz Stone. It was to build Telz here, and with the money of stone. That's Telz Stone. So not the stones of Eretz Yisrael, no, just Telz Stone, Mr. Irvingstone from Cleveland. What? Yeah, that's right. Remez. So he was asked to come, and he came to Eretz Yisrael. So first of all, he moves to Eretz Yisrael. They still, the yeshiva is still there. I believe it's not part of Telz any longer. I think another yeshiva moved in years later, and he was here. First of all, when the students describe, and you can see this in the biography of Art Scroll, that when he came to Eretz Yisrael, his learning changed. He used to give a shir once or twice a week on the Gemara. He was giving every single day. Like he just felt like he was, again, as I said, the avira da'ara, that it really affected him in a very, very positive way. He felt the spirituality that he never felt before, and the way that it affected his learning. There's a story where he's walking, he would walk in Telstone. I think it may be true today as well. You can see Yerushalayim from like the heights of Telstone. Not far from Mevaseret, where you can see Yerushalayim, right? A little bit further down the road is Telstone. And he would go to a certain rock, and he would sit by that rock and just like meditate on Yerushalayim. And one day he hears singing as he's on this rock. And he's walking around, and he's looking for this voice, this very beautiful nigun that somebody is singing. And again, in the Art Scroll in his biography, it says that he then realized he was singing that song, like that it was coming from him. He was in such an ecstatic and this heightened spirituality of being in Yerushalayim and seeing Yerushalayim and being in Telstone, looking at Yerushalayim, that he was lifted to a very, very high place. He had to leave actually there, and it became a whole question. And he went to other Gedolei Torah. The Rosh Hashiva of Telz passed away in Cleveland, Rav Baruch Sorotzkin, and they felt that they needed Rav Gifter to come back and to lead the yeshiva in Cleveland. And again, it wasn't easy for him, and it describes that it was a very, very difficult decision. He goes back to Telz. The students say that he was never the same as a person, and even his health. Once he left Israel, that he was not the same person again. What's interesting, the biography says that when he comes back to Cleveland 2 years later, his house is still available to live in. And he says to the community, he says to his Talmidim, I cannot move into a house after leaving Eretz Yisrael. And he moves into the dormitory of the Telz Yeshiva, and he says a Jew cannot be settled outside the land of Israel, that I'm waiting now to come back to Eretz Yisrael, and I'm not going to live in a home. And together with his wife, he lives for the next number of years, till the end of his life, in the dormitory of the Telz Yeshiva. So that's quite an amazing story. This is Reb Gifter, again, not somebody that I think of as the Chibat Eretz Yisrael, but you see the Chibat that he had. And I'll just end with the following story. Where is he buried? I don't know. I believe that he's in Cleveland, but I don't know. Is he in Har Menuchos? Oh, okay, he's in Har Menuchos. Har Menuchos, here in Eretz Yisrael, Har Menuchos. And one last story. We'll end with this. So another great lover of Eretz Yisrael is Rav Hershel Schafter. He lives in Washington Heights in New York, but a great lover. Talking about Chibat Eretz Yisrael, beautiful stories about his love of the land of Israel. So the story that I came across this past week, listening to a shir, his son Rav Shai Schafter, he's a well-known rabbi. He's in Woodmere, a very well-respected Rav as well. He tells the story, they were here together one summer, going back a number of years, Rav Shai Schafter and Rav Hershel Schafter with his father Shlita. And they're here over the summer, and they hear that there's a Nefesh B'Nefesh flight that's going to be coming in. And Rav Schafter, the elder of Schafter, turns to his son and says, let us get it. It was coming in very early, I think 6, 7 in the morning. Let's get up early. This is Rav Schafter saying, and let us go to greet those that are making Aliyah. So that in itself, for Rav Schafter to take the time and just to be there, they would try to bring people together to welcome the people that are getting off the flight, making Aliyah. So that's what they do. They get up very early that morning, 4 a.m., whatever it may be. They get to the airport, 5 o'clock, 5:30. They make a minyan together. There's about 50 men that are there, and they daven there because they have to daven there to be ready for the flight that's coming in. As they're making their way through davening, they're getting closer right after the Amidah to Tachanan. Now, Tachanan, as you know, so you say Tachanan on a regular basis, unless it's a Yontif, an Erev Yontif, and happy occasions that you don't say Tachanan. So now people begin. So what's that? Yeah, that's right. Very good. So by this afternoon already, right before right before Rosh Chodesh, we also, so as you're about to bring in a joyous time, or a joyous, you don't say Tachanan. So then everyone starts asking one another, how about are we going to say Tachanan? Now, why would you not say Tachanan? So, well, it's a very joyous occasion. People are making Aliyah. I don't know, people are kind of like half joking, like maybe we don't have to say Tachanan. So at that point, Rav Shechter turns to everybody and he says the following. He says, we are going to omit, we're not going to recite Tachanun. And based on the following, and that is that at a siyum, if somebody is celebrating a siyum, if they completed, let's say, a tractate, a Maseches of Gemara, so at that siyum, let's say you daven at that siyum, let's say you're davening mincha at that siyum, so no one recites Tachanun. There's a celebration of a siyum, of somebody completing a Gemara, learning, so Tachanun is not recited. And Rav Shechter said so beautifully, he said, at a siyum, if you complete a long journey of learning, that we celebrate with not saying Tachanun, so these people that are celebrating a siyum in their lives, they have finally come to this moment in their lives, this long journey, this siyum. It's a siyum as well of coming to Eretz Yisrael, of finally fulfilling this mitzvah of living, of Yishuv Eretz Yisrael, of living in the land of Israel, just to be in attendance. Like, if that's true of somebody being in attendance of a regular siyum that you don't say Tachanun, how much more so for this siyum? And he called this a siyum as well. This is the goal in life, the goal of every Jew, the siyum, right? To come, the end point, to come to Eretz Yisrael and live in the land of Israel. So that's what he told his son, and that was the psak of that day. Everybody was happy to know that they could skip Tachanun that morning. So this is these are teachings about Chibat Eretz Yisrael, the love of Eretz Yisrael. I think we could take all of this to heart, especially as the Sefer Charedim. I think what a beautiful teaching. The mitzvah of every moment, the simcha that we need to have to be in Israel, to remind ourselves of what a joy it is to walk the streets of Yerushalayim, to be a part of this very, very special time, and to be able to learn together and to grow in Eretz Yisrael. Okay, Yasher Koach.